Shana Tova, everybody. Thank you, Stephanie. It's quite remarkable that since October 7th, with all the pain and suffering and drama going on in the world, with the upcoming election in this country, and now even with the war that's going on in Israel and Lebanon, for a whole year, much of the news media and social media has been dominated by the war that Israel has been engaged in the Middle East. And some of us know there's a lot of other things going on in the world besides that small little country. We all know that Israel is small, about the size of New Jersey. It sits on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, south of Syria and Lebanon, west of Jordan, north of Egypt. It's surrounded by 21 mostly Arab countries and Iran, which is part Arab and mostly Persian. And while some of Israel's neighbors are rich in natural resources, there's nothing in the ground in Israel. No diamonds, no gold, no oil. And yet, for some mysterious reason, Israel is the physical origin of two monotheistic religions, Judaism and Christianity, and the third holiest place to Islam, also of monotheistic origin. And what is happening in this tiny country affects our lives deeply here in the United States as Jews or as those who are part of the Jewish family. For some of us, it affects us because even though we are here in the U.S., we feel a deep connection to the land, either a religious connection or as being an integral part of our people and our culture. For those of us who may not have such a visceral connection with Israel, we may receive messages from social media or even friends and family that Israelis are genocidal villains, and that any allegiance or connection to Israel implicates us as being on the wrong side of the moral universe. And as a result, we may hold Israel at arm's length in our hearts. And some of us may have our relationships with Israel challenged as we see decisions by the Israeli government that don't reflect our own pride and vision of what the country has been or what it could be. Personally, I'm very challenged by the current Israeli government's support of religious extremists and their behavior in the West Bank. During last year's judicial reform efforts and now during the current Israel-Hamas war, we as American Jews have been asking, what is our role and responsibility when it comes to Israel? And as forces of anti-Semitism strengthen in America and elsewhere, Israeli Jews are asking about their responsibility to diaspora Jews as well. Whatever our feelings are about the state of Israel, we cannot deny the fact that the land of Israel is an integral component of what it means to be part of the Jewish people. The first time the borders of what would become the ancient kingdom of Israel are described in writing in the Torah in the book of Deuteronomy, and there it's referred to as the land of Canaan. We may know that the Torah teaches that God promised the land to the children of Israel, forging an indigenous connection to the land that has always been an integral part of the spiritual life of the Jewish people. Somewhere around 1030 BCE to 928 BCE, this land became a sovereign Jewish kingdom, as described in the book of Samuel, when 12 traveling tribes of Israel wanted to be more like the other nations of the era and demanded that kings replace their judges who had previously acted as their local leaders. This development led to King David's reign and then King Solomon, who built the first temple in Jerusalem. And like most kingdoms, that first Jewish kingdom came to an end in 586 BCE with the destruction of the first temple. And while Jews have lived in the land continuously since that time, we also dispersed outwards to Babylonia and other parts of the world. And then the land was ruled by Babylonia, Persia, Syria, and Greece. We had 100 years of Jewish rule growing out of the Hanukkah story, followed then by Romans and Byzantine rulers, Mamluks, the Ottoman Empire, and finally the British ruled the land. And then, as we know, on November 29th, 1947, fresh out of the Holocaust, the United Nations acknowledged the indigenous connection that the Jews had with the land. And because of the millions of homes and lives lost in the Holocaust and the pervasive anti-Semitism throughout the world, granted the Jews the establishment of the land of Israel. And of course, even though there was a huge influx of Jews from all over the world into Israel with the establishment of the state, many have chosen to live in different places on the planet. On my father's side, my ancestors from Poland and Russia mostly came to the United States in the early 20th century. On my mother's side, the expulsion of Jews from Spain in the 15th century led my ancestors to the Greek island of Rhodes and then to this country. From the time that Jews were first exiled from the land, our sacred texts have consistently suggested the metaphor for diaspora and homeland as one of exile and redemption. According to classical Jewish tradition, biblical and rabbinic, the Jewish people belong to the land, and as long as we're living outside the land, we're not in our home. We're in exile. The return to the land was envisaged as a return to the place where we fully belong. And yet, one of the early Zionist thinkers, Ahad Ha'am, rejected this idea that diaspora equals exile. Instead, he proposed that the land of Israel would become the spiritual center, surrounded by the diaspora. He didn't use the word spiritual to refer to religious inspiration. Instead, he meant a cultural influence where he likened the Jewish people as a body with the homeland functioning as the heart. In his words, when all the scattered limbs of the national body feel the beating of the national heart restored to life in its native home, they too will once again draw near to one another and welcome the inrush of living blood that flows from the heart. The influence of the center will strengthen Jewish national consciousness in the diaspora. It will restore independence of mind and self-respect. It will give to our Judaism a national content, which will be genuine and natural, unlike the substitutes with which we now try to fill the void. Ha'am understood, or even predicted, that the creation of Jewish sovereignty in the land would transform the experience of Jewish life in the diaspora from exile into something else. And the root idea of his metaphor was prescient. Homeland and diaspora are interdependent and cannot live without one another. The Jewish people are a single organism that needs both to survive. Besides Israel providing a safe haven for millions of Jews over the past 75 years, on a personal level, Israel has empowered many of us to feel more confident and rooted in our Jewish identity as a result of its existence. Growing up in Orange County, along mostly Gentiles, small anti-Semitic comments and experiences of exclusion inclined me to hide my Jewish identity and to feel that it was an undesirable part of me. When I went to Israel for the first time when I was 23 years old, and for the first time heard Hebrew everywhere, walked on streets closed to cars on Shabbat, saw kippot and outward signs of Jewishness everywhere I turned, I knew that I had a place in the world where I truly belonged. And for the first time, I understood in the deepest sense the last line of the Israeli national anthem, Hatikva, which states, Liot am chofshi be'artzenu, to live as a free people in our land. This experience of homeland rooted me in my Jewish identity when I returned to this country and gave me the strength and pride to live Jewishly. The land of Israel needs us diaspora Jews. Our Israeli brothers and sisters are living in a neighborhood surrounded by people that want to wipe it off the map. If it wasn't for Iron Dome, the stellar missile defense system funded by the Obama administration, Israel would have been wiped out a long time ago. The strong relationship of the U.S. and Israel to defend democracy in the Middle East has offered so much necessary support since its inception. Justice Baird of the Shalom Hartman Institute proposes a metaphor to describe the necessary relationship between the land of Israel and us in the diaspora. It comes from a little-known midrash on the last words of Moses in the book of Deuteronomy. Towards the end of the book, Moses has been told that he will die before entering the promised land, and that Joshua has been appointed as a new leader of the people. At this fragile moment, fear of the dissolution of the Jewish people weighs heavily on Moses. Will the tribes stay together under Joshua's leadership or split apart? And Moses' fear is grounded. Recall that as the Israelites were about to enter the land, the tribes of Reuben and Gad, as well as half of the tribe of Manasseh, requested to settle east of the Jordan, outside the land, because the land there was favorable for raising their cattle. Not unlike Jewish life today, the Israelites were faced with the challenge of staying together as people, although they were choosing to live in different regions. Moses' dying wish is that the tribes will hold together as a nation after he's gone. Before offering each tribe a blessing, he opens with 3 words that encapsulate this message to stick together, regardless of location. Yachad Shivtei Yisrael. Together are the tribes of Israel. And this phrase then inspires a rabbinic image about a palace that's floating on 2 ships. The midrash is as goes. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai taught a parable. A certain man brought together 2 ships, tying them with anchors and iron bars. He built upon them a palace. As long as the ships are connected, the palace stood. But when the ships separated, the palace fell. So it is, he said, with Israel. If the ships stay connected to each other, the palace is stable on its twin foundations. But if the ships divide and separate, the palace will tilt and fall, sinking into the depths of the ocean. Given roughly that half the world's Jews live under Jewish sovereignty that governs a large portion of the land of Israel, and the other half lives in a diverse and reasonably stable set of diaspora communities, we can imagine both homeland and diaspora ships carrying the palace of the Jewish people. If either ship falters or if they float too far away from each other, the palace of the Jewish people will teeter and fall. And the ships carry actual Jews. We spend much of our life either on one ship, either diaspora or homeland, even though we can take a vessel to visit or even move to the other one. The palace on the top of the ships, like our notion of the Jewish people, is a shared, imagined project. Jews will talk about the palace of the Jewish people in the language of history, culture, or Torah. Knowing that we're doing our part to uphold the palace affirms our identity, our peoplehood, and gives our lives additional meaning and purpose. This metaphor is helpful in guiding our relationship with Israel into the future in 3 ways. First, it redirects our gaze. Instead of constantly peering at our fellow sailors or compatriots on the other ship, the metaphor forces us to keep one eye on the ships and one eye on the palace above, which is the Jewish people and how we believe that Torah should be lived in the world. Whatever ship we belong to, the larger project in which we participate also rests on our shoulders. It means that it's important that we are invested in a vision of how Israel reflects the practice of bringing Torah and ethics into real politic. For example, if we take a look at the confusion on college campuses this past year, we see that much of it has to do with what people think Zionism actually is. Many equate Zionism with colonialism, that Zionism is about taking away land from other people that live on it. But Zionism is actually about Jews, like any other nation, being allowed to self-govern in their tiny piece of ancestral land. Israel's Declaration of Independence brings together liberal values and cultural Jewishness and was never about having an exclusively Jewish state. The main idea behind the Zionist movement was a reviving of our ancient land with the mission to constantly improve itself. Identifying yourself as a Zionist doesn't mean that you're supporting every action of the Israeli government. Just as identifying yourself as an American doesn't mean that you support every action of the American government. In true rabbinic tradition and those liberal values it was founded upon, Zionism in and of itself has been debated from day one and will continue to be debated while aiming to perfect its society. As such, the Jews have constant responsibility to make sure that our vision of that state continues to stay true to that core Jewish value of making the world a better place. Second, if we think back to the ship metaphor, we see that it establishes the vital and essential role that each ship has in supporting the palace. The role of Jews in both homeland and diaspora are critical in sustaining the Jewish people. There is safety and security in concentrated Jewish life under Jewish sovereignty, ensuring that there is always a refuge. But there is also safety and security in dispersion, as Jacob intuited in that fateful moment when he, as meeting his brother Esau after many years of separation, Jacob divided the people with him and the flocks and herds and camels into two camps, thinking if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the other camp may yet escape. Unfortunately, Israel is surrounded by regimes that want to see it wiped off the map. The security issues that Israel faces are real, and it's difficult to make policies regarding the Palestinian territories when there's no stable government committed to coexistence with Israel. It's hopeful that for the first time since the founding of the state with the Abraham Accords, there are Arab states that are interested in normalizing relationships with Israel and standing against Iran, and our diaspora communities can be instrumental in supporting these connections. And third, the metaphor demands a particular way of relating to each other. Just as antagonism between two literal ships balancing a palace would threaten the palace's stability, so too neglect, insults, or worse, between homeland Jews and diaspora Jews are self-defeating, since the sinking of either ship means that we all lose. Sailors on each ship have the benefit of a distant gaze and can see things that their peers on the other ship cannot, such as a hole in the hull, and they should speak up about those concerns. But rhetoric designed to convince sailors on the other ship that their vessel is not seaworthy, that will eventually sink, is self-defeating. The metaphor challenges us to always be constructive and helpful to the other ship, lest the anchors and iron bars holding the ships together break, causing the palace to fall. May we all see the release of all hostages this year, a substantial step towards peace and stability in the region, and form a deeper connection to the land of Israel through education, visiting, advocating for peace and justice, or being inspired in our own Jewish living here in Orange County. May we all realize that we are an essential part of the ship that supports the ongoing existence and vitality of the Jewish people. Shana Tova.